Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode. The individual is a community of unfathomable complexity. Okay. So let's begin like this. Right now, an individual is talking to you and an individual is listening. We are left as individuals when we wake up in our conscious waking state. And based on what the individual does, it gets an association more than the first image it has, the first impression it has of what reality is. You kind of look at the world, not kind of, you look at the world and you see that atoms lead to molecules. Proteins come into form. Cells emerge. Organs emerge. And then the person stands. And what's fascinating is all this stuff unconsciously happened, and then the person became conscious to suddenly name his organs, name his cells, name the simpler proteins, name the molecules, name the atoms, and so on. So right now, based on the different levels that we see life, based on the different level of complexity that we see life, the individual is not an individual. You look at it, you are a collection of atoms. You are made of cells, you know? And then we're left as the person. And what's interesting is the person becomes the cell of civilization. And you can say all those people in the gym drinking protein after a workout, they're kind of like molecules becoming protein. So the suggestion is that while we're being an individual, this individual is made by a community of cells, a community of complexity. And that's the fascinating thing. I remember hearing it from Sadhguru, where he's like, you eat a banana and that banana becomes you. And I don't know if he was saying this to Chef Ramsay or something. Like there's this video of Sadhguru and Chef Ramsay, and Sadhguru tells Chef Ramsay, this carrot is alive for you, and Chef Ramsay looks at the camera and he's like, I refuse to believe this carrot is alive for me. Right now, who's speaking to you, I find, is a presence of attention through the human form. The human body it has its own program. You know, if you don't listen to the laws of your biology, you know, it can't be just emotional. You know, this is why human beings go to the doctor, because after a certain point, you can't have just an emotional analysis, you know. I find it very fascinating. We follow this progression of atoms becoming molecules, becoming proteins, becoming cells, becoming organs, and then becoming the person. And all of this happened in a silence of no conscious interpretation. That means whether we are conscious or unconscious, existence is doing its thing. The fact that we are conscious brings forth, it contributes to our inner realm. That means if I never knew anybody, which is impossible to be born in this world and not to know, but maybe, I don't know. let's say if you imagine if you were a person who never knew nobody ever knew who you were. When you were gone, it would be as if only the inner realms left, you know. But when the human being has a social dimension, has a dimension of engaging with the phenomena in front of its eyes, then it becomes different. This idea that we think we are individuals, we think we're just one person, this person is kept in an incredible complexity. And when I say an unfathomable complexity, if we realize that the individual and the collective are like two sides of a coin, they are inseparable, then that explains how simplicity is one edge and the other edge is complexity. You know? It's when I look at it, ideas are never in front of the eyes of the person. The fact that you see a person, they got a personality, the personality of the people you meet, you don't see how it's being set into motion behind their mind. We see the effect of who they are. We see the result of the inner processing. We don't see the inner processor, or that attention, I personally feel, is attributeless. We think we are just a person, but the person lives to engage its civilization, engage its society. So it's kind of, we start off individuals as individual, like, or let me say it like this: the child is born without an individual consciousness. We start off as the whole moment. We become individualized in the moment. We become an individual. We start the inner realms begin for the child. That means I feel the child, its conscious memory in the lifetime begins when it becomes an individual to itself and has its first experience of implementing an archetypal mode of being. Plato would say, as above, so below. We see the inseparability of the microcosm's occurrence and the macrocosm. It's fascinating. It's like if the cells of the body all became conscious, you know, and imagine every cell, every atom of your being had a mind of its own, and it didn't want to listen to the intelligence of the nature of the whole body, you know? It's kind of fascinating. That means atoms were living a life. Molecules also started living a life. Proteins started to live a life. Cells started to live a life. Organs started to live a life. The person started to live a life. Its world started to live a life. Its society. When I look at in front of my eyes, I find myself in a game. When I look at behind my eyes, I find the one who's playing the game. And the player, based on where it's looking at, takes shape. If you look at your past, how could you be something different? If you look at your future, how could you just be the same as the past? There's a Sufi mystic named Hazrat Inayat Khan. And I wanted to read for you some of his quotes, go into an early quote tunnel. Hazrat Inayat Khan, the Sufi mystic, says, "Our virtues are made by love, and our sins caused by the lack of it. What science cannot declare, art can suggest. What art suggests silently, poetry speaks aloud. But what poetry fails to explain in words, music can express. Whoever knows the mystery of vibrations indeed knows all things." Hazrat Inayat Khan says each human personality is like a piece of music having an individual tone and a rhythm of its own. Hazrat Inayat Khan says, "My heart is tuned to the quietness that the stillness of nature inspires." Some people look for a beautiful place, others make a place beautiful. Hazrat Inayat Khan says, "I can see as clear as the daylight that the hour is coming when women will lead humanity to a higher evolution. I have known good and evil, sin and virtue, right and wrong. I have judged and been judged. I have passed through birth and death, joy and sorrow, heaven and hell, and in the end I realize that I am in everything and everything is in me." Living in the world without insight into the hidden laws of nature is like not knowing the language of the country in which one was born. I remember having a dream, this was years ago. I shared in some the talks I was giving at the time. The dream was myself, like I was perceiving myself running and simultaneously dividing into three screens of vision in the dream. That means imagine you're running and suddenly one person becomes like three points of attention at the same time. You see, it's like, of course that was a dream state, but I'm saying it was this idea that it was like one person, it felt like one body, that one person divided into suddenly three people in the dream. It was like that experientially wise. That means it's like, imagine you're looking from a first person point of view, suddenly you're like this third person, but this third person point of view is seeing three views. What does that mean? That means it's like, you see, imagine somebody had a screen beside you. Imagine your computer screen. Now, imagine your computer screen, just like with Photoshop, like how you can change the opacity of a picture. Suddenly somebody made the opacity of the computer like 10%, you know, or just the computer. I'm telling you, it's like the computer is there, but it's not in the room of the conscious personality. What can I say? We're between a perception where things are all dualistic. Either they can be void, either they could be singular, either they could be at an unknown speed where it's not fathomable. You know, these are I find in reality, these are the four states. It's kind of like the four elements. We find this in everything. So when I look at the individual, I notice that the individual is on a rock in the middle of nowhere. Immediately, I've confronted a sense of emptiness everywhere. You know, then I see it's on one rock. Immediately, I've acknowledged the sense of singularity to the world. Everybody's on this rock. Everything that's ever happened on humanity has happened on this rock in the middle of nowhere. And you want to know even what's more freaky than that? It's kind of like uh, nowhere is now here, technically, with a bit of space between the W and the H. So it's like you've confronted the emptiness of where it began, the emptiness of the page. You've confronted the color of the ink of the pen, the singularity of phenomena, and you've also seen how there can be duality. When you draw a painting, there's a sort of contrast. You see even the space between the sentence, between the words in the sentence is also a contrast, you know, making each world have a value as if it's its own island. And to duality we come where we are now. And really everything we think about, it's going to be a what if double-sided. It's like right now it's the era of double-edged thinking, where we look at every thought and we're like, we could see the good and bad, the simplicity, the complexity, the known, the unknown of every idea. I've said in these talks that the human being at its most advanced creative level is not an individual, is actually a rhythm, is part of a process that is experientially oriented, not just conceptually shined upon, you know. You know, cells interact with one another. And I constantly wonder, what if human beings are cells and they don't know that they are being the human body? What if, imagine like the red blood cells in your vein, like in your, you know, in your body, suddenly they became conscious, built a language of their own, and tried to comprehend what they are. And they suddenly realize there's more than cells, and everything seems to be like one body. You know, whether they thought the heart was a dimension, a heavenly abode, the brain was a heavenly abode, you know, these were all, in some sense, it's all one body. And when I say the individual is a community of unfathomable complexity, that means I sometimes wonder, what if we are God created something that is too complex for itself, just if that notion. Because in the 6th century, human beings personified the world, and it's kind of like a humanized explanation of the formation of reality. It's an early attempt, you know. But when you see everything is man-made, to man, the concept of something being beyond man means that the person identifying is also identifying beyond the human framework. That means, seldom is the said, even though I found it kind of strange that, for example, I was born in Iran, and I remember I asked a religious person, what is the soul? What does God in Islam say about the soul? And it was something said that, in the sense that it is the secret of the creator. That means when you go ask every religious person, they have faith, they believe that they are souls from the creator, But when you go and ask a religious person, what is the soul? It's a mystery, you know? And I find that religion is a sort of stoic resolution. It's a stoic approach to reality, you know, and it kind of makes sense because think about language kind of in the early days emerging. People before language were very behaviorally oriented. That means it was probably like there was a lot of people on this earth had to use their hands or point to things, or communication was presence oriented. It wasn't personality oriented. The fact that we're communicating through personalities now is an update. I feel before that, the common language of people was the environment. That means when a bunch of wolves are attacking like a gazelle or something, you know, it's like those wolves are speaking the same language. The condition, the circumstance of the environment is like the commonality, you know? So I'm kind of thinking that if we were cells in an unfathomable kind of, if we were cells in a, like if our cells, let's say it like this, if our cells wondered why we go to work, I'm suggesting that's the unfathomable complexity. In the same way that if the person wonders what is every cell is doing, you know, like right now it's kind of interesting, isn't it? That when we wake up, we are conscious of the collection of all the cells that make up our biological existence. You know, you don't see what's going on in your heart. You know, you can say the person gets feelings, you know, with every inhalation, exhalation, like your whole body does a mini nanosecond radar scan, you know, and you can become conscious of that. But like, I'm just saying that nature seems to have created a creature, and the most fascinating idea was that is the universe a creature? And so religion doesn't even answer that. Religion does, even though it doesn't, it says man is made in the image of the creator, but man is not, cannot fathom it. We're like a bunch of fish that don't notice we're in an ocean, and we're trying to figure out what the ocean is. And the religious books are like, it's everywhere, it's within you, its currents are guiding you, you know? And we're like, where is it? We don't see it, yet we are in it. So it's an assumption of the first position. And human beings are so different. Their ideologies, their eyes, just look at your own eyes as a person, you know? How many things in this life have you seen that you can say they were the secret view that your eye was authorized to see? This might be a strange thing to hear, but I feel this is the most intelligent thing our species can do. Make all academia and knowledge in the image of the biological human body. People don't realize right now we have it easy. You know, right now, the interferences, there's nothing interfering with your inner realms. You at most kind of, let's say, interpret the outer realms, and there comes suffering. You know, the inner realms have such a naturalness to them that in the future, that naturalness, there's no guarantee that it will remain. Somebody in the chat section mentioned they want to hear sci-fi. You know, now I've kind of, the talk has kind of gone towards the future. I'll tell you one thing I wrote in my science fiction novel, that the world was divided between the futurists and the traditionalists in the year 5025. The traditionalists are all those people who have a linear sense of time. They feel time is going forth. You know, time is like an arrow. The futurists, they include extraterrestrials, robots. This is all in my science fiction novel, guys. if you're just tuning in and hearing this. The futurists, they don't consider time. They have a totally different comprehension of energy. You know, some people believe energy dies. You know, I feel it can't. I feel that even though the human personality may break down at the time of transition from this physical plane that we're piloting in, but the energy can't die. So if you comprehend yourself as energy, technically you can't get any more eternal than that. I'm telling you, we're honestly just energy conscious of itself. In the inner realms, you're a presence of attention. In your outer realms, based on how you engage, how you move, and what you do, pretty much, you animate as a person. You see, most people, they judge a person after they have acted. They don't judge the person before they acted. And some people, I mean, of course, people judge you before you do things, you know? When you realize the people of the world, they want to see action, that action is the result, then you kind of realize why many battle plans must be kept dormant. That it is the test of the inner patience. That means people don't realize that you're living an inner life and an outer life. And if your inner life, you have listened in this life through the various experiences that has happened to your intuition, to not even intuition, not to even make it seem like some sort of invisibly rooted agency. I'm just saying that in this life there are moments where it's not just the information is being processed conceptually. It's a kind of void stare where the emotion, where it's as if like there's activity going on. Like sometimes in my inner realms, it feels like there's a party going on next door, and you hear the music from the wall. That means I sometimes in my inner realms, I mean the inner realms, guys. I'm trying to get the species to care for its mind again, rather than just nullifying it and going, beast mode. I find it that it's kind of cute what our species is doing, what academia is doing. But in reality, when we don't know what the mind is, it means every situation has an unknown variable that can't be given a value. That means there are many moments in life where if you're honest, it's like when you're honest, I feel there is no fear. There is just what you can see and what you can't. Any situation, if it's active, you gotta look and find the mind of the moment. The mind of the moment is very crucial. What is causing intelligence to occur in the moment? That means this might sound like a strange thing to say, but I've had many moments where I literally personality-less. And for a while I thought, okay, what is this? How could the person not be a person to itself? And then I got the clue. That deep sleep, we are not a person. That this biology is designed in such a complex way that in certain states of its being, you don't even exist as a subject to yourself. It's like no neurologist could study consciousness, in deep sleep. Only when you wake up you got the chance. And the best thing we can say is consciousness is an unknown opportunity of how knowledge can move. It's a relationship of awareness with self and an oscillation of this. So many people on this planet don't know how to honor their mind. Even this sentence I'm saying, to honor your mind, may sound strange. Maybe like Mr.Within, what do you mean honor your mind? Because the mind is not an object, and you tend to honor things in accordance to action. The mind is a presence. I can't emphasize this enough. The word presence is simple. It is instantaneous. It is who you were before words emerged into the moment. So this individuality of us can nullify, and it can be like an identification with awareness being a rippleless pond, and every phenomenology happening echoing through all senses of memory. That means there's times, I don't know, it was like there was a time where I was just going about my day and I just suddenly felt upset. Suddenly I felt upset. No reason, no specific thing, just this. It's like I was like, imagine you're walking somewhere and you suddenly feel sad, upset. And it was such a fascinating thing because it was an emotion before the reasoning, before the imagery of the emotion. And I was like, what is this? And I felt the emotion was that there was a subconscious event taking place, that there was something happening that the being like an antenna is picking up on. Because for me, mysticism is should be honored by science, but it is not. Because mysticism has the same tenacity to experientially validate. Mysticism is not a domain of you believe it, it happens, you don't believe it, it doesn't happen. It's just the mystery of what is here experientially. You see, scientists are studying existence. Mystics are studying experience, the nature of the experiencer, the nature of the fluid mind. I feel that our ancestors back in the day, they in some sense crafted weapons and they defended their kingdoms against the unknown. And so now the weapons that mankind should have is no longer physical. It's like everybody just needs a pen, notebook, or some recording device, and for them to conduct based on their ability and efficient observance of their life. You know, sometimes it's like wondering why something is there, and then another setting wondering why something is not there. Sometimes I feel like, what if we are being uh, like the pebbles on a mountain for a higher dimension? What if the greatest advancement of humanity is the least greatest advancement in a higher dimension? And what would a higher dimension imply? You know, because is the person moving and then the world changes, or is the world moving and the person is a result of the movement of the world? If we like really think macrocosmically, then it's not really people that are living here. It's just big giant cosmic events, and we are like the result of them. You know, it's as if our civilization is built on a turtle's back, and we're like, yeah, you know, civilization's going where we want it to, but little do we know the turtle's swimming. The turtle is swimming with a mind of its own. Nature has a mind of its own. To discover nature in yourself means, like, think about it when you see an animal. You see, you could be the most, you see even evil people in movies, they are like petting cats, you know. You see, like, the diabolical guy, mad guy, like the villain. You see, when it comes to something that is not worth, no, I don't want to say not worth, but it's like the gentleness when you see an animal. Like, you can't hate a puppy, you know? You can't hate an animal, really. You can't even, when an animal attacks you, you can't even blame the animal. You blame yourself as a human being because you have the intelligence to navigate around that situation. The poor animal just reacts to whatever it is in its environment. So if we entertain a multidimensionality that is simultaneous, for example, just like we have two brain hemispheres and through being conducted through the frontal lobe, I'm just saying that just like the person, like your left brain hemisphere is the right side of your body is being conducted by the left brain hemisphere, and your right brain hemisphere is confronting the left. It is what am I saying? Conducting the left part of your body. So I think this is the case that if the right side of the brain gets damaged, like the left part of the body of the person could kind of perhaps change. I feel that we keep thinking the person is creative. We think people are creative. We think people are destructive. Not realizing that people are just moments of sight and they're given an alphabet of events they go through, which then they use to build their life. There was a time I felt my life was very insignificant. Just to myself, I felt very insignificant, you know. Let me tell you, it's like when you're young and you lose a couple battles, you kind of retreat to your inner. So, guys, in the chat section, Mr. Great Fool talks about. Anyways, in the chat section, it said lights explain the mechanics of how to project from source as a mirror. I mean, when you study any sort of mechanics, you want to understand why something works, and you look for the power source. And when you look for the power source of the human being, it's not a conceptual, even though we put it into concepts to speak about it, but the power source, the mechanics of the biology, it's like it has so many factors you depend on. You don't need just water. You also need food, you need shelter, you need the proper temperature to exist. You need resources to continue. I feel that we all feel like candles. We all feel like candles. Whatever you think, whether you feel ultimate or you feel simple, you feel complex, whether you feel you know or you don't know, you will eventually see that it's dynamic. And I'm telling you, anybody, especially the future generations, if you hear me, you know, let's say like even years after I'm not around, my voice echoes that far. The greatest ability on this planet is to forgive the past for the sake of the future. That if your attention goes on inefficiency, and efficiency attracts you. It's like your attention is there, you know. Guys, by the way, I'm going to say something. This YouTube channel is different. If anybody, for example, hears me and they dislike what I say and they want to insult me, if you want to insult me, at least do it creatively. Just as a general thing to all the people in the future who may come across, you know. Make sure it's creative. It's this constant game. People are either thinking everything is the same, or people are feeling things are constantly divided. It's either divide and conquer, or it's unify and rebuild. Okay, so Honk, guys, Honk in the chat section has said, Honk if you don't exist, has said the mind will never figure out though it's a dynamic experience. Right on, man. Right on. You know how hard it is for our species to just acknowledge an unknown river behind our eyes? There was this Zen master named Chung Tzu, guys. One day his disciples go up to him, they see he's like early morning, he's woken up at the edge of the temple, let's poetically say the temple. Let's say the temple is like up in the mountains, and Chung Tzu is early morning, he's just there, and his disciples come and they're like, yo, Chung Tzu's woken up early, why is he doing this, you know? And they go to Chung Tzu, and Chung Tzu is frowning, and they're like, oh my god, our Zen master is frowning, what the fuck? And they're like, if Chung Tzu is upset, then we must be doomed. And they go up to Chung Tzu and they're like, Chung Tzu, what's up? What's going on? You know? And Chung Tzu says, guys, I had a dream. I had a dream I was a butterfly. Like legit, I was a butterfly. Chung Tzu is saying this to the disciples. He's like, I dreamed I was a butterfly, and when I woke up, I didn't know if I was a Zen master dreaming I'm a butterfly, or if I'm a butterfly dreaming I'm a Zen master. And I'm pretty sure everybody who was there started to cry at the same time. That's the mystery of our world. We have feared it. We have just only way we accept to we try to engage it is through escapism, through movies and films. I would say if this world didn't have filmmakers, you know how much how many more people would be like clones, you know? So people have wondered about the nature of the mind. Don't think I'm saying something new, guys. This question every human being that has been alive has been asked. They have wondered about this. They have wondered about it to a certain level, and then they've either stopped wondering about it and they've engaged with the games of life, you know? Or they have engaged the games of life and they're only left to explore it. That means it's like, I don't know what it is, but I think the most healthiest way for the mind to advance is for you to honor what you know, and also find that honor through realizing what you don't know. There's many things I don't know. You know, oftentimes when I speak, it's like, trust me, I'm not even like, I don't have too many opinions on myself even as a person. Because the world of personhood, it's a solo game. It's a game that whether you live for the collective or you live for yourself, either way you will get a solo, your inner realms live their life. You know, it's the important thing is what the inner realms can do, not just for you, but what your inner realms can do for the outer realms. I remember seeing this video with I think it was Richard Nixon versus JFK in like a political debate, and those who listened on radio, it seems they voted for Nixon, or I could be, it could be Reagan. I'm sorry, I could be mixing the name of the president. But those people who listened on the radio, I think it was Nixon. Just a second, folks. Okay, there we go. I think I found it. But yeah, yeah. I was right the first time. So, guys, it was when the first TV presidential debate between Nixon and Kennedy. Now, the thing is, those who saw it on TV, I feel they voted for John F. Kennedy, those who listened on radio, they voted for Nixon. And there was this video, in the actual video of their debate, which is on YouTube, where Richard Nixon says something so hilarious. Like his sense of humor is, you know, Richard Nixon, I mean, he has the disadvantage as being this older fellow, and, and what happens is Nixon says, I'm not going to take advantage of my opponent's youthfulness and inexperience. Something like that. It was like kind of, you know, it was like a double-edged humor. I feel there is many people in the world who could potentially hear this or be hearing this talk and looking out a window. And the world beyond our window of perception can be very strange, can have different variations. Little things can suddenly bother you a lot. Suddenly a lot of big things can also not bother you. Guys, I can't find the video. So Usher, I can't find the video, but I think it was from Nixon, maybe that the thing he said. I feel that what human beings can influence is like, think about it. Your physical movements limit you to changing the image, but from your inner realms, you can evoke through language and image. you know, when people think about memories, you ask them, where are your memories? Excuse me. They say, it's in my mind, man. That's where my memories are. In my mind. You ask them, where is your mind? They say, my mind is in my brain. You ask them, where is the brain? They say, it's in the body. You ask, where is the body? The body is in physical reality. You ask, where is physical reality? You loop back into the brain. You loop back into the conscious mind. So there's a sort of loop. Because when you wonder, it's like that's why I'm saying there's a simultaneity. There's a simultaneity to how the body is feeling, it's being the mind, it's through feeling. You usually feel the body. Body is feeling it's a mind. I'm just writing this down as I'm saying. And the mind instantly considers to be the body. That means when you wake up, there is no doubt of you being awake. Right now, as I'm speaking, do you have a doubt that you exist? You see, no, existence is tangible. You know, we can even knock on wood. You know, imagine you knocked on a table and then the table was like, stop knocking, man. What are you doing? That would be a point in the future where consciousness has been imbued to, you know, a household object. There is a simultaneity, and that's all I'm trying to bring the attention of people. And I'm saying, when every time I've tried to observe it, you can have an explanation from both angles. You know, you can have a total explanation. It's your explanation. I mean, it's hilarious. Our explanation is limited. Everything, all of knowledge is like a line when there's time. I'm telling you, it's like a line. And based on what comes first, if you think of it in regards to simpler principles and how layers build up, layers of simplicity lead to complexity. That means if you just keep doing one thing, eventually, if you keep climbing the mountain, you will reach an elevation of that art form or craft where you haven't tapped into before, you know. And I'm finding that what is more precious, what is more valuable than physical labor on this planet? And if we nullify everything to matter, it's like there's no reason why matter should work. If you think you're a bunch of atoms right now, why should you work? Why should you even move? Do you see? I find that it becomes a bit dangerous when things become just meaningless. When they become meaningless, that's anarchy. It's like, all right, time to go. You know, it's our meaning. It's your sense of you have to trust your mind in its ability so far. You know, you have to trust the experiencer so far. You know, we're tunneling through various moments, various interpretations of how long the moment is, how short the moment is, how instant and changes, how someone one day comes and says something that breaks your heart, and another day someone comes and says something that fixes your heart, you know. And the world keeps going in this kind of progression, and the one thing every human being can resonate with is change. This is why I think it's one of the most beautiful questions to ask, that you tell someone, how has your life changed? And that question is so powerful. People don't realize. Whoever you ask that question from, their answer will be powerful. Because change comes from the attention to what was important and how did that important move throughout time. You know, believe it or not, it's like entrepreneurship. You are the entrepreneur of your inner realms. You are the employer of every ideology accessible, you know? It's like the mind is like a toolbox of events, images, selfhood, intuitive flows, you know? Sometimes a person doesn't, because like here, for example, in film, you're limited to the light frequency, you know? And so it's frames that project the film. And so if we thought of our life every day, every moment we sit down to be like, who am I? When we answer that question, that's a frame in space and time. That is not the film which is always happening. So nature is going forth, and I feel that human beings should aim to stick around and try to advance the civilization, because you never know. It's kind of cool. It's like everyone all over the planet is doing their own thing, but we're all doing it in a same environment. So guess what happens? Guess what happens? We begin to have an infusion of archetypes. Imagine you're a child in Japan and all the stories your grandparents told you, and imagine you're a child in America and all the stories your grandparents told you, and imagine you're a child in wherever in the world, in different countries, different places, in Russia, in Iran, wherever. You see, everybody has an experience of a human being doing something which, if they can share, I feel has value to the civilization. There was this show called How I Met Your Mother. There was an episode where all of those people met their doppelgangers or something. And so that feeling that there's a doppelganger is this feeling that through the pattern that you are recognizing reality, there are others who also recognize, who could potentially have that pattern. Now the thing is, when you wonder about a collective being, I found a very obvious example. I mean, of course, you're given esoteric examples, metaphysics, theology. But I'm telling you, when I wondered about a collective being, I was like, what is this whole thing in politics? Let me tell you, language is crucial. The evolution of language is like the common denominator of every branch of knowledge. Every branch of knowledge is like a unique language of its own. That means when I think about what I know, I think about in how many ways a phenomena can I process it, but I don't think about like in robotically. It's more like in the moment, thoughts arise, go with it kind of vibe, because these inner realms, it's kind of like, imagine I was saying this talk and then my voice got lower, 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 so lower, that eventually it was as if I wasn't speaking, even though I was giving the talk, but it was at such a low volume, imagine you couldn't hear, you know? But the talk is still there, and I was like, whoa, how many ways is the mind still active that I am not conscious of? So there's one view that your mind is just this engine, and you gotta somehow start this engine, get the red line this engine somehow. But the other view is the mind is already moving. You see, there's one view in metaphysics where the being is considering that they are out of the body. Do you know how many there's so many, just you go find different branches of denominations of spiritual practice around the world, and they have storylines that go this route. What's very fascinating is that sometimes when I didn't realize it when I was young. I was caught behind this kind of artificial identification with my world. I hadn't, all those people who they don't care for the world. Let me tell you why. Because you have misidentified the world. That means the person who has an ability to be a fool gets to see what's on the other side of the fence. Because to what's inside the sphere of knowing, you are a fool when you want to go outside. To those who are outside of the sphere of knowing, you want to go inside, you're a fool. Trust me, just like how some people said, yo, look at this human being, this yogi going into the mountains trying to go to the level of the gods. Look at that fool. And then there were certain gods who wanted to come down on earth. For example, in Vedic thought, Vedic mythology, this is the case. That gods would come down to consult certain mystics and yogis. that the gods would be look at a god and be like, yo man, you're going down on earth? What a fool. And that's the thing. You are a fool if you attempt to build a bridge that no one sees, but the moment the bridge gets made and people walk on it, you're no longer the fool. That means no one can stay a fool forever. you know? And people don't realize. Let me tell you, I feel intelligence has nothing to do with. Of course, the brain's wiring and DNA and all these play a factor. But I'm saying, if you're a conscious being, you've got enough. If you can identify yourself and you can identify another, that's enough to navigate in your inner realms. Really, I said anybody who can drive. If you can drive a bicycle, if you can drive anything, if you can identify what is you and what is not you and navigate, that's enough to kind of start working with the inner realms. And the inner realms is kind of looking at what is the behind the scenes implication of how your eyes are open and how much of it is conceptual. And if it goes beyond the language threshold, does that mean it returns to a nullification where whether you have the idea or not, you are being what you are being? That means the fact that we're temporary, means that we kind of like the idea of us is not always here. The fact that I'm a person right now speaking, it's based on the conditions of my physical existence. If this physical existence suddenly, let's say the breath wants to leave or some event happens or something happens, then it's as if like the experiential domain, let me tell you, how does it feel when you take off a jacket? You're still the same. The attention is still its nature. In Vedanta, there's a story of Rama. And Rama was like this enlightened king. Cool guy. and and Rama's and somebody asks, if I remember the story correctly, someone comes to Rama and says, why do we have to work for enlightenment, man? What is this? Why do we have to work? Why do we have to work for this kind of clarity? And Rama looks at him and says, you guys don't understand. The beings in lesser dimensions, they can't even ask the questions. They're bound to their environment. Their environment is the full voice of their mind. Something else began becoming its own voice. That's what separates the animal from the human. So Rama says, beings in lesser dimensions, they can't ask the question, and beings in higher dimensions, the gods, they're getting so many offerings that they already have the answers. They don't need to ask the question. So in both dimensions, beyond the human realm and below the human realm, there is no need to wonder. The phenomena of wonder, the phenomena of the unknown and the question, Because if the person considers, there's a lot of people who, the world is kind of like 50-50 at this point, I think. Some people feel they're eternal, some people feel they're not. Those people who feel eternal, it's based on their inner realms. Their outer realms, everybody acknowledges as temporary. Even though in the religious monotheistic religions, in the Abrahamic religions, the idea they have is that you die, and when you die, you are resurrected. And then you're judged, and then you're directed, by the Creator or the Divine Will. Like, that's the religious narrative, you see. Because I'm telling, the stories are not getting less and less. The stories on this planet is getting more and more. The more human beings there are, the more ways that language can express. Now the thing is that we have 8 billion people, but how many of these 8 billion human beings do you feel are choosing to do something new or just choosing to fit into the past? I feel it's not cool to, because the past has to be honored, but then the whole point of honoring the past is like, okay, we hear you, you hear your ancestors, you give them a high five, but then it's the future generations where our work truly begins. And I feel that, let's say you became liberated, let's say we went with this ancient idea of enlightenment and you became enlightened, what then? What do you do then? Does that mean you're not a concept anymore? Does that mean there is no person suffering anymore? Does that mean the world, just because you got enlightened, the world is fine? Just because the ostrich put its head in a different dimension, in the ground, it didn't see the jaguar running at it. So I feel that regardless of what kind of personal advancement you as a human being go through, um, eventually you're going to realize it's the world that's our work. That means when a person begins identifying with their civilization, you know what kind of moment that is? That's such an epic moment in history. That's a moment in history where every person who had lived in history, if they could look, they'd be like, whoa, you telling me I could have totally lived, with an awareness to my inner realms with this sophistication? I feel that Renaissances began with beautiful questions. And I feel that it's not just answers. So many people are fighting over answers. It's savage. It's like people fighting over oranges and apples, and both of them are, one of them saying it's like it, and both the orange and the apple are fruits, but they're different fruits, you know. Or let me even make the example more intense. It's like someone fighting over a green apple and someone fighting over a red apple. And then one of them's like, all apples are red. The true definition of an apple is a red apple. And then someone's like, no, man, the true definition of an apple is a green apple, and that war could go on. And that's what it feels to me when human beings identify with language and they become ignorant of the human experiential dimension that's taking place. That means this is very important, because the moment you're not influenced by language, you see the suffering. You see the suffering, that's out there. I remember I was walking in downtown Toronto and I had a break between, I was attending Toronto Film School there. And it was in the break between one of my classes, and I went to Burger King, and outside of Burger King there was this person who was like destroyed human being, like a completely, the guy was shivering, his hand had a cigarette that was burned to a point, and the guy's just beside the food place kind of shaking, and of course the story is much darker than I'm saying, probably. But I went there and I was like, Burger King had like, of course I had maybe like, didn't have that much of a budget, but but I got a burger and I gave it to the guy, and I just gave it. It's like I couldn't even speak at that point. I just gave the food to him, and I was like, wow. It's like it makes you suddenly tap into that evolutionary instinct where you would see like people dying on a battlefield. And you kind of see civilization is the same battlefield, but we're just wearing suits and ties. We're not realizing how many savage dimensions and what is going on in the shadows. And unless the current framework chooses to update, the shadows remain shadows. I like this picture I've chosen. It's from an artist named Benjamin Bardot. And And go support him, guys. I don't know who he is, but this picture's epic. And this picture is a suggestion of how different the view is. This, you see this view, guys? This is what I've called ego vision. This is how you should be looking at everything in life, from a view where you're seeing its correlation to another, you know? Because a lot of it, the way the mind zooms in and zooms out through deduction and induction. That means either you're looking at something from a general picture and then looking at the parts of it, the complex, smaller parts of it, or you're starting from it broken down and trying to build up to one general value. And when you realize a lot of stuff in life, a lot of conversations, it happens through this wavelength, you know. And what it is that you should realize it is okay to be what you are, as if your DNA has equipped you to the capacity that you can function. You know, that means whatever you are, like it doesn't matter if it's a dolphin, it doesn't matter if it's a human being, it doesn't matter if it's, I don't know, like a mythical Chinese dragon. It doesn't matter what it is. It's like whatever it is, it's a creature with in a certain circumstance, and it goes forth. In the movie Gladiator, the main character, I think it's a deleted scene, but maybe it's not. There's a scene where Maximus, his friend, the general friend, before he goes up to a fight with the weak emperor, his general buddy comes up and he's like, "Yo, Maximus, we could get you out of here." And Maximus says something like, "Nature never puts anyone in a situation which nature itself has not prepared them for." That means nature knows what you're doing, even though you may feel you're not. And then when you tap into your nature, you're actually coming to the presence of the attention of the witness. And when you don't fear this presence of the attention of witness, and you actually study it in a way you yourself can trust, and let me tell you, you will trust something when you pilot it. You know what that means? That means you won't trust your ability with a vehicle until you've driven to a point where it's like second nature. And I'm telling you, I've wondered about the inner realms to a point where I've noticed how it can become second nature, and how it has become second nature. It was the subjective evolution, really. That after we fully mobilized as an object, now the mind began mobilizing. And beyond the mind, it's the mobility as the world. So it's like a very interesting phase, and this is a very giant prediction, and I have no idea if my voice is a message in a bottle, or if my voice is just something written on sand, and the waves of time are gonna erase them. Whatever it is, it's that I feel for a certain range of time we're individuals. And even though it's like when you look at it, when you look at the cell, it's like a world in there. I'm not joking. It's like when you look at your cells, when you look at a protein cell, or let me say, you look at your organs, the complexity of the system is unfathomable. That means imagine you had a surveillance camera on every cell. Imagine every blood cell in your body, you could give a GoPro camera on it and we could see that on a giant screen. It's like that would be such unfathomable movements if consciousness is attributed. So in our unconscious, the world is static. In our consciousness, the world is dynamic. And right now I'm speaking to you in a conscious reality, so if we are to build an advanced civilization, we have to keep this principle that regardless of who people think they are, they should not forget that the civilization is also living a life that deserves to advance. You know? You know, right now in bookstores we have a section where it's called self-help. Hopefully we'll have a section in the future where it's civilization help, how to help your civilization. This constant section kind of briefing of the greatest minds on the planet trying to get the hardest problems to global audiences. Because the more minds look at the problem, the more answers there can be, the more dimensions there are to work from to kind of process and answer. So guys, in the chat section, honk shares, honk if you don't exist shares. It requires a very unusual mind to undertake the analysis of the obvious. So guys, I'll give like this playful option to the listeners. You know, we have to wonder about the nature of the image. There's a lot of things that are abstract and we consider them to be there, you know. every human being has acknowledged the unknown. What we don't know is what we have had in common with every human being that has ever lived on this planet. The collective unconscious Carl Jung spoke about. Okay. Okay, guys. So this is from something. This poetic work is. I'm gonna go into a poetry tunnel right now and just share some of my writings. You know, the person never knows how long they're here, so I think it's worth sharing usually. So the book is called Brahmana, and I wrote it in. I wrote it in. Excuse me. I wrote it in 2016, and let me see where the poem was. The poem that I feel I should read is called Be the Inventor. Be the inventor that did not fear his invention. All fears must be confronted until the heavens cannot be caged on earth. The grand scheme of things is a moment that did not disperse. Be the inventor that trusts the hands of God. For my beloved Creator, thy will be done. But do not forget behind your sight, the cosmos invented your eyes. Allowance is the key to evolution's door. Love is so free, it doesn't need words. And that's the end of the poem. Guys, I just looked at the chat section for a second, you know. Just giving this a try, guys. Just giving this podcast thing for a try. It's been 6 years, but I'm still giving it a try. I'm gonna read another quote, another poem from this poetry collection. And guys, I'm gonna actually open it up. Why am I choosing the poems? Okay, so there is how many poems in here? 48 poems in this poetic work I wrote in 2016. So out of 1 to 48, people can just choose numbers, and I'll read whatever comes up. Let me just write the numbers. Alright, guys, I'm going to read the poems, and then at the end, I'll share the link. Okay, so let's start from the first one, number 9. Alright, guys, it's going too far. Holy shit. No, I'm joking. Okay. There were way more people listening. Usually it's like 3 people listening, and I'm like, oh my god, an audience, you know? Alright, guys, this is becoming. I want this talk to not take 2 hours, guys. 2 hours more. But I'm gonna read as much possible, guys. Don't worry. So, just a second. Alright, guys. This is in case I can't read the whole thing, but I'll read whatever. Let's go, okay, most of it is like, oh, okay, it's the same person saying a bunch of numbers at the same time. Alright, guys, so let's go. First one is 9. Let's see what is 9. Number 9. Number 9 is called Transparency of the Sky. I have no idea how I've written a poem about the transparency of the sky. This is gonna be a Alright, transparency of the sky. In the oneness of life, there is only one voice. The eons smile as time and space come and go. Can eternity forget its temporal walk? Can the sky change colors like a Photoshop brush? Let the crystals in your eyes shine brighter than the territory of words. A truly free man cannot die. Did you know that? If yes, then you're more free than the wind in spring. Do not fear the winter of your dreams. In the moments to come, there's only one moment to be. Did you know life cannot die? Perhaps that is why the transparency of the sky never lies. So, the second one, let's see what the second one is. The second one is Centennial Pride, but it's spelled with a C. People are going to be like, why, Mr.Within? Why is it spelled with a C? And I'm going to be like, hey, you know. Sometimes you got to just see what's going on. Alright, let's see what this poem is. Centennial means pride of 100 years or something. Centennial pride. Beyond sentiment, all are capable of absolute observance. The world is not an ignorant shape. How does mystery climb the staircase of ambience? Do not be convinced by what meets the eye of the eye. There is no road when all existence walks within you. What is more consistent than a sun that doesn't want to set? If you've noticed ocean waves, what makes your breathing any different? Live in such a now that when the wind blows, change happens formlessly. All pride is an excuse to exist without the precious gems of the heart. What gives hope to the hopeless when hope must... Oh, sorry, I'll read that again. What gives hope to the hopeless when hope must originate from you? How to free people, free the people. Live in a clarity that never left the heart. Live in a clarity that never left the heart. That's the last part of it. Perhaps a clarity as simple as your breathing, Okay, what's the next one? 33. Self-emanating truths. So that's number 33. The joy of lavish untidings is a now that cannot end. Can the knot be opened? Can you look at these words and see your mind become the sky? Can the pen that doesn't break fix the letter's mistake? Is language a barrier to the divine? If so, why so? How have heaven and earth walked in the same moment? All divine chess pieces must go back into the box of starlight, where time and space are checkered in their dualistic gameplay. Self-emanating truths suggest how what is within you is also within the universe and the moment it is. That's it. That's the end of the poem. So guys, what number was I at? 19. Who said 19? Honk. Honk if you don't exist, said 19. Okay, let's see. Sons of the Moon, that's the name of it. Could a glow have started the eternal fire? How can a white flame confront its darkness? Many poets shall rise from the grave of their egos. The epoch does not lie when meditation is a table inviting the sacred dance. The sons of moonlight cannot avoid the sunlight that is being them. Can ocean waves testify for a large rock in space? O mankind, you have not realized yet that all that you see is being you. Do not even judge an atom, for men have called broken particles names for too long. What if at dawn the judgment day remembered the judgment night? A caterpillar once learned from a horse and began galloping in the streets of a half-bit leaf. Can a butterfly before it is born be jealous of its own wings? The sons of the moon are colorless. That is why in the darkness light can breathe. So the next one is 22. 22 is called The Questioner's Quest. So this is number 22, guys. Whoever said number 22, Tony. How often, it's called the questioner's quest. How often have you questioned the questioner's quest? What has made Midas get tired of mythological gold? Can the free be transcendentally pure beyond heavy knees? When Orion asks for its belt back, the atmosphere might fear itself. The grace of any seeker is an awareness to a moment within all. When faces turn themselves into the audacity of the kindest mankind, heaven and earth will dance as one. The road may be longer than words with their own agendas, but despair was never a desperate pair. All children must climb beyond the mountains of their own self-conceived thoughts. Yeah, that's the last part of the poem, guys. All children must climb beyond the mountains of their own self-conceived thoughts. That means advance even beyond your own inner realms. Alright. Alright, guys. So, yeah, I pretty much read a... Oh, somebody said 12. Zimoit's lady. Okay, let's see what number 12 is. Did I read 12? Probably not. Number 12 is You Are Your Strength. Alright. So, guys, this is the last poem, I guess. Let me see, did I get everyone? Yeah. You are your strength. You are your strength. No one can give it to you. The universe cries some nights, only because it has realized its existence in one verse. Do not fear the words of the unknown. The world is not a trap, but a great allowance. Be so free that an empty sky smiles at every fading cloud. If you think this poem is short, what about the human lifespan? Love makes no mistakes until the very end, but even then, there is not a mistake. How could divine reunion be misplaced? How could divine reunion be misplaced? Blessings. Yeah. It's like the human being might mess up, but nature doesn't mess up. So anyways, guys, that's for the poetry tunnel. Thanks for engaging. Let me see what I can say about the title a little bit more before I end off. So, guys, in the subtitle I've written, The Linguistic Creature, I'm going to speak a little bit about that. That in front of our eyes, when we look in the mirror, of course, you see one person, you see you know, the physical you. But then when you wonder about the life story of this person you're seeing in the mirror, when you wonder about the within part of it, you know, you begin to see it's a coagulation of memories, a coagulation of patterns recognized, a coagulation of rhythms kept in motion. Do you know? That means I noticed it. I noticed it. I don't know how many people kind of notice this, but that throughout the years that I've been giving these talks, I've kind of noticed, not even kind of, but like, it's like as I'm speaking and I'm visualizing a certain, let's say, image, that image mid visualization, as the inner realms are moving, mid movement, a memory can be evoked. You know what I mean? That means you can suddenly find a recognizable pattern out of nowhere. You never know, you know? I remember that my aunt, so Persian families are like these big families. I don't know how to say it. There's always big family gatherings there. And I remember we went in Iran and my grandmother had invited everybody, the whole family. This was when I was much younger. And my cousin, we had a new cousin enter the family. This cousin of mine that was born, and he was like 9, and I think he was 9 at the time. Not 9, I think he was younger. But there was a situation where he had seen like me and my brother. I have a twin brother. Me and my brother from back in the time when he was in Canada, but when the whole family had come to Iran for like a summer. And when we were at my grandmother's house, this like, you know, big dinner, for a second I remember I just enter the living room and I see my small cousin is surrounded by strangers in the party who are like, oh, what a cute kid. And he can't recognize a face, and he turns around and he notices my face and he runs towards me, you know? You know? And then I just call my aunt, and you know, it's like, and I'm like, it's okay. But it was definitely, I was seeing pattern recognition in human psychology, where my young cousin was like, who the hell are these strangers, you know, like, and then suddenly noticed my face and kind of like, you know, it was a recognizable pattern, you know. And sometimes in your inner realms, certain things, they correlate to how you have seen something before, you know. For example, like I gave a really great example. I think it was a talk from like, I don't know, last night or something, where I said, imagine this canoe. Like I saw it in my own self. I'm giving myself as an example. Like I envisioned a canoe just moving just hovering in a street. And then I noticed the canoe was from a different memory and the street was from a different memory. And I managed to envision both of them in the same instant. So visualization is like memory, is like the palette of colors you have, and in the conscious moment, based on the archetype, which is the brush, it's like the archetype in regards to the experiential data, the memory, you colors the present moment. So your inner realms is like a palette of colors, you know, filled with different colors. Even Marcus Aurelius says the soul is dyed with the colors of its thoughts. That means, you know, trust me, it's like, it's good that people can't see each other's imagination. Do you know how much like this political correctness culture would go if thoughts could see, you know? It's kind of interesting, you know. This political correctness that's happening in Western media, it's literally a kind of subconscious reemergence of thought policing, which is strange. Reality is very strange. I think at some point we're all just creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere, and we're like, what do we do here? And we just go forth based on whatever strategy is accessible to us. There's a quote that it's from Kabir. I just remembered. He says, many know that the drop merges into the ocean, but few know that the ocean also merges into the drop. That it's not just an individual journey. Enlightenment is like, it's like the intersection of your individual dream and your collective dream, your collective self's dream. You know, and I feel like when I looked at the caterpillar, like when you look at a caterpillar, when it goes through metamorphosis in the cocoon, the cells of the caterpillar die, right? So the cells of the caterpillar die, and then as the last cell dies, then the cells of the butterfly emerge. So I was thinking, it's like the caterpillar is a creature experiencing a two-dimensional plane. Its legs are built for two dimensions. It's not a creature of flight. It goes into a process, and in that cocoon state, it lets go of what it is no longer, and becomes what it becomes the butterfly. And the butterfly, isn't it weird that a caterpillar suddenly like becomes a butterfly and gets access to three-dimensional states? Like, nature, what are you doing? And nature seems to be allowing the caterpillar, like, that's good karma. You know, good caterpillar karma when you become a butterfly. you know. So, little did people know, even caterpillars have karma. So I feel language is acting as the cocoon from a transition of individual objects into a recognition that they're actually the rhythms of a grand subject, the unknown subject that hasn't emerged. That means, imagine there's going to be an idea in the future that is going to surpass all ideas. You know, technologies really shift the way of living. You know, back in the day, we were hunting and gathering for basic like necessities to survive. Now it's like the person has become a hunter-gatherer of information. It's like it's like after your stomach's full, now your mind is exploring. Your mind is hungry. You know, and what is the mind? What does the mind hunger? It hungers experiential advancement, but it also hungers the better result of experiential like this hunger, for more experience. Pretty much in this life, you're either identified with what you're moving. It's like everything you imagine is moving, and you're identifying with what everything else that's moving, like with the world. The self is literally the world's movement, or the world is the self's movement. And when you think the world is the self's movement, you go towards the mystical, you go towards the unknown. So pretty much I could tell you all knowledge is divided between the known and the unknown. Every field of knowledge has its known limits. And so those who are sharp enough, street smart enough to notice the unknown, then you will see how far humanity has gone. So it's kind of like the first view is that you have to feel you don't see the world properly to even evaluate yourself properly. You know, it becomes very complex to some degree. That's what I'm saying. It's an unfathomable complexity. Everything could be a door. Imagine like this company was hired to break particles and constantly keep breaking the particle and particle. And then the employee comes to the boss, and imagine they've broken the particles to an endless degree, to a degree where it's like ridiculous sci-fi level. And then the person comes and it's like, hey boss, do we keep breaking the particle? Like these particles never end up breaking. They just keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller. So you see, it's like we're kind of like our experience of existence is like infinity is the shadow of an eternity. Time wise, it's like there's no time. Time is not an issue, but the manifestation of it is an issue. That means it's kind of like, how are you identifying with existence on its own even before you were here, and the existence that now you're here. It's like the sages would say there's two worlds you should look at. What are these worlds? The world that was here before you, and the world that's going to be here after you, and the world that you're in from the moment you were born to the moment you're going to, exit this world. So you see what I'm saying? It's like there's two ways of analysis. Your inner realms began when your consciousness individualized. And so the Sufis would say this mystical thing to die before you die, which meant that you realize you're not a thought, so you stop suffering from an image. You realize the unknown is still real, even though the known breaks. So anyways, guys, I want to thank everyone for listening. Much blessings and namaste. I mean, one thing I should one thing I should say is that just this identification that a creature, evolution, made an object get to a position where it became a subject to itself. The explanation of that is so mysterious, and it's one of the great questions of humanity that all the children of the future generations, the doors must be open. We have kept this world so limited conceptually, that I'm kind of feeling like, what is this? Is this like Moses kind of, bringing water to the people? It becomes a situation where it's like, the unknown is your true teacher, Anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. Much blessings and awesome.